But the fear of it not working out led us to discover some really important things about ourselves.
This is Mike Allen. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris, but my grandkids call me Rivers. Here we ask a simple question. What did life teach you the hard way? Because a lifetime reveals things you can't learn any other way. On this show, we sit down with people who lived a little, stumbled a little, and learned a few things along the way. So pull up a chair, because what a lifetime reveals can steady another. Welcome to the Grandpa Channel. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. We have a terrific guest on today, Mike Allen. I'm really excited. Tell us a little bit about kind of the arc of your life and how you've gotten to this point in time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm first grateful to be chatting with you. Thank you for the invitation. And I grew up, well, I was born in Arizona. I grew up in Salt Lake City, kind of near the University of Utah. And a key thing that comes to mind right off the bat was just our unique family situation. My parents divorced when I was about 1 or 2 years old. I don't really have any memory of it, but I grew up in a house with 4 older sisters and my mom until the age of 7. And my mom married my now stepdad, who I just call my dad. I kind of welcomed him into the family with eager and open arms to have another man around, or have a man in the house, a male. And my sisters, not so much though. I look at my stepdad and I'm just like, wow, like he walked into not just getting married for the first time at the age of, I think he was 47, which is almost how old I am now. Maybe he was 46. Yeah. Anyway, he had been a bachelor his whole life, and he met my mom and they fell in love and got married. And with that came 5 kids all at once, and 4 of them being teenage daughters, stepdaughters, right? And I still remember the way that he approached that coming into our family. He sat us all down and he said, "Hey, I'm not going to try to be your dad. I would love to be your friend. And I love your mom and I'm here to stay." And that was the essence of his message. Yeah, just incredible maturity and awareness. And yeah, he was such a blessing to our family. And over the years, I mean, he's gained the trust of every one of my sisters, and they have a great relationship. But it took some time. I think I had one sister that wouldn't talk to him for about the first year of him being in the home. And so anyway, it's amazing to have that example, that father in my life, even though it came a little later than, most people. I went to BYU. I served a 2-year mission in Brazil and Sao Paulo. I graduated from BYU in graphic design, and I had a career in that for over a decade. I mean, maybe 15 years or so. And that had some ups and downs. I had a really amazing career, but I had some challenging times during that career. It took us to New York. It took us to the Bay Area. We lived in New York for about 7 years, and that's where I got to know your daughter and Ty. And for about 6 years, we lived in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, while I was working different jobs there in San Francisco. We moved back to Utah to get a little closer to family, and we were anticipating it would be more affordable, but housing was insane at the time. That was around the pandemic, so it was late 2020, early 2021. When we relocated back to Utah. I kept my job for a while, just working remote, but after a few months, decided to leave that job, and we were just blessed with circumstances that allowed me to take a little break. So I took a little hiatus, a little break, a mini retirement kind of experience without having the next job lined up, which was new for me. And during that time, just a lot of interesting things happened, and I became more aware of what I really wanted to be doing. And that is what led me into the work I do now. And so Erin and I have our organization called The Light in Us, which she talked about. And then I also met some people, and through a whole story we can get into if relevant, I started a men's group that we focus on men's mental health and wellness and spirituality and brotherhood. It's called the Hear Brotherhood, and that's spelled Heare, because it's the combination of I'm here and I hear you. So here to hear is one of our sayings. And I've been doing that for the last almost 3 years now. Yeah.
Where would you like this to go, Mike?
That career transition was a major recent milestone in life. And there was kind of just a difficult, challenging moment that led to some really important insights and breakthroughs for us. And I think I'll just share that story. While I was at DoorDash, that was my last full-time job out of San Francisco. Incredible opportunity. It was an incredible job, but man, I mean, it was a rocket ship. It was fast-paced. It was high pressure. Teams were changing all the time. It was just kind of hang on, it was an intense period of my career, and some incredible experiences too. Some of my absolute highlights were while I was at DoorDash. But there was a time where teams had changed. I found myself a little bit lost in the overall structure and organization, and was working with a manager, a boss at the time, that we were just having a hard time getting aligned and seeing eye to eye. And we started off okay, and then it kind of started to fall apart. And it got to the point where we had another hire, and I was about to get a new boss. So I was finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, because this experience at work over those months were kind of wearing me down. And I was starting to think, I don't know if this is worth it. Just the mental stress, the daily struggle. And it would spill over into life at home. I'd come home frustrated, grumpy, annoyed, feeling misunderstood, not feeling valued. I was feeling down on myself. So it was just affecting life, right, in a pretty big way. And I finally had this glimmer of hope, like I was going to get a new boss, new manager, okay, fresh start. But prior to that transition, it was performance review time. And I went in on a Friday to work, and it was time for my performance review. And so I had current manager and then future manager. And the decision was to, let's all just have this together. Let's all meet together and have this conversation. And it was like the worst career experience of my life. Like, performance reviews had historically been pretty good. And this one, it was the total opposite. It was just, we're having all these issues here, these struggles, all these misunderstandings. I kind of froze up in that setting. I just went into freeze, and I attempted to sort of explain, justify, prove my merit and my value, and it just was falling flat. It just was, I feel like I was just reverting to this very primitive survival instinct, and I was just like palm sweating, and I was so nervous about the whole thing, and I performed terribly in the interview. And here's my new boss, who I'm thinking, like, I'm already blowing it, with this new chance. I like, the light at the end of the tunnel just shrunk into darkness again. Yeah, all hopes and dreams just shattered. And so, and I was exaggerating this whole thing internally too, based on, I look back on it and I'm like, it probably wasn't as bad as it felt, but it felt really big at the time. And so I have that experience. I get home, and I am just at a low. I get home, and we get the kids to bed and everything, and Erin can tell I'm just in a bad state, right? Just feeling really down. And we finally have a moment to sit down and talk about it. And I tell her everything that happened. I'm just expressing how terrible the whole thing went, and then just all my fears and concerns about, I don't know what this means for our future. I don't know if I'm going to get fired in the next couple weeks here. And if so, what does that mean? Do we need to relocate? Do we need to move out of the Bay Area? We've got a growing family. I think we had 4 kids at the time. We have 5 now after this time. And there was just a lot on my mind and on my heart. And I've shared all of this, and Erin's just very lovingly just listening, patiently, just holding space for me, right? And I finally kind of finished everything that I needed to say, and she was like, are you done? Is there anything else? I was like, no, that's good. That's it. That's good. And she's like, okay, can I share something? And I was like, of course. And she got this really genuine, heartfelt smile on her face that it wasn't a fake, like, oh, we could just gonna tough this out. It was like from the heart. She just smiled at me, and she said, Mike, I think this is gonna be a really good thing for you and for us, because I think it's going to help us figure out what we really want. Like, this job hasn't been fun and fulfilling for you for a while. Like, maybe this is the point at which we reevaluate. And it was just this warm wash that came over me in the way that she responded to that. And we flipped what I thought was going to be a weekend of job hunting and trying to problem solve and figure stuff out and deal with the emotions of everything. I thought that's what it was going to look like. Instead, we turned that weekend into this beautiful, creative, blue sky, ask all the big questions. Let's write and journal like what really matters to us. What do we want to be doing? Let's say it didn't matter where we lived. If we could just choose anywhere, where would it be? Just out of curiosity. If we didn't have to, pay the bills, let's just say money were no object. What would we do with our time and with our lives? What are the most important things to us? And we just wrote and shared and talked about all of these big questions. And it was this incredible experience, just beautiful, like a beauty for ashes kind of moment. And what's incredible about the whole story arc, at the time, I had no idea what was going to happen on Monday when I went back to the office, right? But I showed up in a different space because we had just done some beautiful work on like thinking, and it wasn't just problem solving for a crisis. It was, what are the possibilities and what do we really want and what matters, right? And so come Monday, I get back to the office, and the new boss that was in that meeting took me aside and just said, hey, let's just start fresh and let's see how it goes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, great. Okay. And things ended up being okay with that one. And then teams changed again. The company's continuing to grow. And then I had like some of the best moments of my career came a while after that, but like they followed. And I left that company with great relationships on a high note. Like it was phenomenal. But like, so there was this grace in that, right? Like worked out. But the fear of it not working out led us to discover some really important things about ourselves, about our family, about our desires, our intentions, and what we created from that weekend.
Mike, that's a fantastic story. Wow. It's amazing how out of terrible, awful circumstances, sometimes it's like you were saying, the beauty for ashes can happen. And you don't see it at the time, obviously. I have the benefit of having spent over 70 years on planet Earth, and I'm amazed at how much I see the hand of God in my life in small ways and not so small ways. And that's why this happened. And it's one of the very best things about being almost 71 is being able to put the pieces together and connect the dots. So where do you think the future takes you?
Oh, that's a great question, because I feel like that exercise that we did those years ago, we're sort of like living the dream that we hoped to. We're in it. We're living it. And one of the interesting and kind of ironic, funny aspects of that is when your dreams come true, it doesn't mean life is just easy and great, right? And I say that with a degree of there's a humility in this, and I acknowledge also maybe a little bit of naivete where we think once this happens or once we get there, then everything will just be perfect, right? And it's like, of course it isn't. Of course there's still going to be challenges, trials, opposition, etc. They just look different. It's just the way life is. And if we didn't have that, like where would our growth and progress be? Like we need those moments of challenge, of opposition for our growth. But really, I'm in a place right now where I want to be exactly where I am. I want to maintain and sustain what we're doing. We do mindfulness and meditation practices. I facilitate breath work, a holotropic style breathwork meditation regularly. We do retreats regularly for couples. I do men's retreats. My wife does women's retreats, and they are just such incredible, powerful experiences. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever worked on, beyond our own family unit. I don't really know what the future looks like, but I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully grow in it and figure out what does the next version look like. I don't know yet, but I'm loving being where I am.
You kind of took away my next question, but maybe we could build on it. And that is what do you do in your life, maybe more specifically, when you feel the most alive, Mike?
There's a few ways that I'm thinking of answering this, and I'll start with this one, which is I have a little practice. I don't do it every morning or even every day, but I have a practice of just whenever I think about it, whenever I'm conscious enough to remember to do this, I will step outside in the sunlight and just close my eyes and open my palms and my heart to the sunlight. And in a form of prayer and meditation, just be in that amazing light and the fresh air and feel the ground underneath my feet. Sometimes I'll go barefoot and stand in the grass, and I feel incredibly alive and connected in that very simple practice. And
Mhm.
I love that that ritual, that moment. I can go outside and do that practice and it brings me back to gratitude. It brings me back to awe, experiences of awe. I mean, they're all around us and they're so good for us. There's a professor of psychology in Berkeley, I think his name's Dr. Keltner, whose huge body of his research is around having experiences of awe and the impact that has on our lives, on our sense of fulfillment, of joy, of mental wellness. And it's right here in front of us all the time. It doesn't require climbing a mountain to experience awe, right? It's right here. And it's such a powerful practice. And I've felt that. So there's maybe a very accessible answer. I also feel Thank you. But I do also feel that sense of being very alive in, I mean, playing and interacting with my kids. They're delightful, unexpected things that they do and say and create. I love that. I love being in partnership with my wife in that. I love connecting with her, being very open and honest and compassionate towards each other. But I mean, the depths that we go to now, based on the work that we've done and the things that we've been learning. I mean, it's incredible, just the depth of connection that we have, and we've helped each other through our hardest moments in those, late nights or early mornings or whenever the challenging things come up. Like we're there for each other in a really meaningful way, which I love. And the last thing I'll say is I love being in the work of helping people get clear on who they are and why they're here, help people get reconnected with their true selves, with God and with community, with others. And there's a lot of different ways that we do that.
Yeah, how could you not love that? I guess one question I've got for you, is this a gift that you've had throughout your life, or when did you get it? Was it gradually over time, or was there an epiphany or two or three that you had?
Yeah, no, I would say it's probably a mix of those things, right? Just growing up with all those older sisters who had been through some stuff. I didn't know how to help any of them. But what I could do is just listen. And that's what I did several times. And in fact, sometimes would just listen and feel like I have no idea what to do or say. And so I would just remain quiet. And then they'd be like, "Oh, thank you so much for just listening." And I go, "Great."
Pat you on the head.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and there were traumatic things that my family experienced. I personally was spared most of them from experiencing them directly. I think I had sort of some indirect things that happened, but the thing that I did directly experience was just that fatherlessness in those tender years of 1 to 7. And I was generally a little more of a sensitive kid. I was perceptive of how others were and how they felt. But I still had the messages of, don't cry and suck it up and be a man and all that kind of stuff. So I had this mix of things, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think I sometimes fought or resisted some of what I would consider to be gifts because I didn't think that they were socially good or acceptable or approved. And I think I was often looking for validation from, my peers or from male figures because I didn't have some of that early on. And so I can draw some connections of maybe why I'm interested in helping men now and interested in forging brotherhood now from some of those early experiences.
I think that it, kind of goes into kind of divine sort of coincidence. You didn't think when you were a 7-year-old, I think, hey, I can use this later on and I can help other men kind of feel more comfortable spiritually and things like that. But you just go through it. And that's one of the things that I really like I mentioned about, turning 70 and being in my 71st year, is I can just see that there were certain experiences that I had that now they make sense. And there are certain things that I experienced that created more than unusual amount of empathy for certain people in certain situations. And I love that. And then there was somebody, a great writer, who said that picture it like you have lines of connection between, people, especially if you're in a congregational meeting on Sunday where you've had experiences with lots and lots of people. You got all of these lines of connection going every which way. And, the idea of community, and that's what you're really creating. And I just think it's a beautiful thing, and we're all connected. I'd like you to tell me, what are 2 or 3 of your superpowers, Mike, that, maybe set you apart in a good way from other people? How would you boil those down?
Well, I would love to approach that by continuing a little bit on the previous question. A few years back, while we were living in New York, we had a really just influential, interesting, spiritual giant friend come into our lives. Her name's Tara, and she was doing all kinds of interesting therapeutic types of work. I had, I guess, what I would call a session with her, and she just started to work with me and help me to see things that I was holding. I mean, I was carrying at the time a lot of shame, just about who I was or my sense of worth. I was feeling really lost and disconnected, and she just helped me. She guided me through a process that it was a monumental shift in my relationship with myself, my self-perception and awareness, and in connection with God. And finally to feel of his love independent of my follies, of my shortcomings, of my mistakes, that kind of unconditional love. And that cracked something open that really influenced many things that followed. Another big one was years later when I I was thinking of doing men's retreats because my wife had been doing women's retreats, and it felt like there's all kinds of stuff out there like this for women. And I didn't know of anything out there for men. I was like, do men even do this kind of stuff? And then the little that I was aware of, it seemed like not aligned with what I wanted, and so I started to just think like, what would a men's experience look like, where we can step into vulnerability, where we can take the masks off for a minute and just be real and then have some powerful experiences. Let's not just talk about all of these practices and things that are out there, but like let's participate in them. Let's try things. Like let's have experiences, And so I was thinking about all this, and my wife introduced me to a friend of hers named Brian Hurd, who was doing men's retreats. And I met with him, and he said, hey, you gotta just come and experience it. Like, I can't just explain it all to you. Like, you gotta come and try it. And he met with me on a Tuesday, I think, and the retreat was on Friday of that week. I was sort of like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready to just dive right into this. But I noticed like, wow, I felt a lot of resistance to that, and how ironic that I want to like maybe create retreats, but yet I'm not knowing if I want to go to one,
There's the disconnect there.
Yes. So I had to really humble myself. And, I had an interesting insight even in preparing to go to that retreat, which was that I resisted the idea of taking time for myself and investing the cost for myself. I was really resistant to those things. And I judged it as, oh, that's selfish, or I should probably just be here with my family. Wouldn't that be better? And in the long run, of course, right, we want to have that quality time with our families. But Brian helped me see that I was resisting doing those things for myself because actually deep down, I didn't know if I deserved it. I didn't know if I felt like I was worth it. And I mean, what an insight before I even got there that was so important. And I didn't feel like that was some manipulation that he was trying to use to get me there. I felt like that was valid. That was real. And so I went to this thing and had an incredible experience. And there was a breathwork meditation that for me was kind of the thing that just culminated the whole event. And it was a really powerful, spiritual, life-changing experience. And after that, I was full steam ahead on creating. And by the way, Brian loved that I was thinking of doing retreats, and he was very open and collaborative with me.
Challenged by that or anything.
Exactly. There wasn't the competitive component. He just said, we need as many people doing this kind of work as possible because the world needs it. We need it. And I loved that spirit that he brought to it. And so he came to my second retreat that I ever put on because he wanted to come and support and be a part of it. And it was awesome. So I learned how to do breathwork meditation after that experience. So this is getting to, the original question, which is, I feel like because of all these factors combined, I feel like one of my superpowers is to be able to be with people in their darkest places and to express love and support in that and a sense of empathy. And I've been through my own darkness and fears and shame, and mine has looked different than anybody else's, and everybody else's has looked different than mine, but the beliefs and the feelings are actually quite common, even though circumstances are very different, right? And so to be able to hold space and be with people through their heaviest, hardest things, and to help point them to the light in moving through that process. And the tools vary for that, whether it's, the breathwork experience or whether it's what we do at the retreats. And there's a variety of things that we do. Just asking the questions, being willing to step into the vulnerability and to be with somebody else's pain. I think that is a gift that
it's a great gift
that I've been given.
Mike, it's a great gift. You've really dropped some nuggets, some really wonderful nuggets. And I'm so appreciative that you would come and, be here on our show. Thank you so much. One thing that stayed with me from this conversation was Mike's realization that what looked like fear on the surface was really a question of worthiness underneath. I think a lot of us carry questions like that longer than we realize. If you want to sit down with this a little longer, there's another conversation this week about how some of life's most important lessons arrive disguised as setbacks. And if you want to stay with a question like this a little longer, we've got a place for that too.